I've cleaned crime scenes for the past 6 years. I just got sent to clean the address where my family lives. The dispatch came through at 2:17 a.m. on a Friday, which wasn't unusual. Crime scene cleaning doesn't follow a 9 to 5 schedule. What was unusual was the address glowing on my phone screen. 4738 Maple Grove Lane. I stared at those numbers for a full minute, my coffee going cold in my other hand, trying to convince myself I'd misread them. But the address didn't change no matter how many times I blinked. That was my childhood home. The house where my parents still lived. The house where my younger sister Delilah had moved back into last month after her divorce. I called my boss, Leonard, immediately, my fingers shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Leonard, there's been a mistake with the dispatch. The address you sent, that's my family's house. There was a pause on the other end, the sound of papers shuffling. No mistake, Kira. Police called it in about 20 minutes ago. Standard protocol cleanup. They specifically requested Precision BioClean because we're discreet and thorough. My throat closed up. What happened? Is everyone okay? Leonard, tell me what happened. I don't have details beyond what's in the work order. Multiple rooms affected. Heavy biological matter. Police cleared the scene at 01:45 hours. They need it cleaned before sunrise because apparently there's family coming in from out of state. His voice softened slightly. Look, I can send Michaels instead if you need to be with your family right now. This is obviously a conflict of interest. I should have said yes. Should have let someone else handle it. But something in my gut told me I needed to see this myself. Needed to understand what had happened in that house while I'd been across town, watching late-night television and ignoring my mother's calls. No, I'll take it. I'm already dressed. I can be there in 15 minutes. Leonard was quiet for another beat. You sure? This isn't something you can unsee, Kira. And if it's your family's place, the emotional impact, just think about it before you commit. But I was already grabbing my keys, already heading for the door. I'm sure. Send me the full work order. I hung up before he could argue further. The drive to Maple Grove Lane felt both impossibly long and too short. My mind raced through every possible scenario. A break-in gone wrong, a gas leak causing an explosion, some kind of accident. But the work order on my phone specified biological matter, which meant blood, which meant violence, which meant someone had been hurt badly enough to require professional cleanup. I tried calling my mother's cell, straight to voicemail. My father's phone. Same thing. Delilah's number rang 6 times before going to voicemail, her cheerful message telling me to leave my name and she'd get back to me. Nobody was answering, and that silence was worse than any explanation could have been. I pulled up to the house just after 2:30 a.m. and immediately noticed the yellow police tape across the front door. The porch light was on, casting everything in harsh yellow illumination. My father's sedan was in the driveway. My mother's SUV was parked on the street. Delilah's little compact car was tucked behind the sedan. All 3 vehicles present, which meant everyone should have been home when whatever happened, happened. A police officer I didn't recognize was sitting in a cruiser at the curb, apparently assigned to watch the scene until I finished. I approached with my credentials ready, my company ID hanging around my neck. Officer, I'm Kira Okafor with Precision BioClean. I'm here for the cleanup. The officer, a young guy who looked barely old enough to shave, checked his clipboard and nodded. Scene's been cleared. You're good to go in. Just stay out of the master bedroom upstairs. That's still an active investigation area. My stomach dropped. The master bedroom. That was where my parents slept. Can you tell me what happened here? This is my family's house. The officer's expression shifted from professional detachment to uncomfortable sympathy. Ma'am, I can't discuss an ongoing investigation. But your family, they're all at County General Hospital. That's all I'm authorized to say. Relief flooded through me so intensely, I nearly collapsed. They were alive. Whatever had happened, they were alive and at the hospital. Thank you. Thank you so much. I turned toward the house before he could see me crying. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, and the smell hit me immediately. Blood has a distinctive odor that most people don't realize until they've encountered a significant amount of it. Metallic and organic, with an underlying sweetness that makes your hindbrain scream danger. The smell was strong enough that I had to stop in the doorway and prepare myself mentally before continuing. I'd done this job for 6 years, cleaned up after murders, suicides, accidents, and natural deaths that went undiscovered for weeks. I'd seen things that would make most people vomit or faint. I'd trained myself to compartmentalize, to see biological matter as just another substance that needed proper disposal according to hazmat protocols. But this was different. This was the living room where I'd opened Christmas presents as a child. This was the staircase where Delilah had fallen and broken her arm when she was 7. This was home, and someone had bled here. A lot. The living room looked like a slaughterhouse. Blood splattered across the cream-colored walls in arterial spray patterns I recognized from my training. The coffee table was overturned, its glass top shattered. The couch was soaked, the fabric so saturated that blood had pooled on the hardwood floor beneath it. I forced myself into work mode, pulling out my phone to document everything before I started cleaning. Photographs from multiple angles, notes about the extent of contamination, assessment of what materials could be cleaned versus what would need complete replacement. The blood patterns told a story. The arterial spray on the walls suggested a major vessel had been severed, probably the carotid or femoral artery, based on the height and distance. The volume indicated the victim had been alive, and their heart pumping for at least some of the bleeding. The drag marks leading from the couch toward the kitchen suggested someone had tried to move the injured party, or possibly tried to escape. I followed the blood trail into the kitchen and stopped dead. Someone had written on the wall in blood. Not words, but symbols. Geometric shapes that made my eyes hurt to look at directly. A circle with lines radiating outward like a crude sun. A triangle with an eye in the center. Other marks that didn't correspond to any alphabet or symbolic system I recognized. The blood used for the writing was already dried and flaking, which meant this had been done early in the sequence of events. I pulled out my phone and took several photos, zooming in on each symbol. Something about them felt wrong, in a way that had nothing to do with being drawn in blood. The kitchen itself was relatively clean compared to the living room. A knife block sat on the counter with one knife missing. The largest one, the chef's knife my father had always used for carving meat. I found it in the sink, washed clean, but with traces of blood still visible in the rivets of the handle. Whoever had used it had attempted to clean it but hadn't done a thorough job. I bagged it as evidence, unsure if the police had seen it or if they'd focused their attention on other areas. The dining room was untouched. The downstairs bathroom was clean. My father's study looked normal, though his computer was missing from the desk, probably seized by police as evidence. I climbed the stairs slowly, following occasional blood drops that suggested someone had ascended while injured or while carrying something bloody. The hallway upstairs was dark, except for light spilling from my childhood bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was open. I could see inside from where I stood, and what I saw made no sense. My old room had been converted into a guest room years ago. Simple furniture, neutral walls, nothing personal. But now, the walls were covered in papers. Hundreds of pages taped up in overlapping layers, covered in handwriting I didn't recognize. I stepped closer, my flashlight beam revealing the contents of the papers. They were all the same thing, repeated over and over in increasingly frantic handwriting. She's not who she says she is. She's not who she says she is. She's not who she says she is. Thousands of repetitions covering every available surface. The ceiling, the closet doors, even the mirror over the dresser had been covered in taped paper, obscuring any reflection. I pulled out one of the pages carefully, trying not to disturb potential evidence. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, like it had been written by someone who was either very old or very unstable, but I recognized it. This was Delilah's handwriting. My baby sister had covered an entire room in repeated warnings about someone not being who they claimed to be, about someone lying about their identity. The question was, who was she talking about? I photographed everything, my hands steady despite the growing dread in my stomach. 6 years of training had taught me how to function through horror, how to document and process and maintain professional detachment even when every instinct screamed to run. But this was testing those limits. The master bedroom door was closed with police tape across it. The officer outside had said it was still under investigation, off limits even to me. But I could see blood seeping under the door, spreading across the hallway carpet. Whatever had happened in there had been bad, catastrophically bad. I moved to Delilah's room instead, the smaller bedroom she'd claimed when she moved back in last month. The door was ajar. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. Bed made neatly, clothes hung in the closet, toiletries arranged on the dresser. But then I noticed the photographs. Every single picture that had included me had been defaced. School photos with my face scratched out. Family pictures with my image burned away, leaving holes in the paper. A framed photo from Delilah's wedding where she and I stood together as bride and maid of honor. My face was completely obliterated while hers remained untouched. Someone had systematically destroyed every image of me in this room. I picked up one of the damaged photos, a snapshot from last Christmas where the whole family had gathered. My parents' faces were intact. Delilah's face was fine. But where I should have been standing was just a black scorch mark. The paper burned through completely. My phone buzzed with a text from Leonard. Police just called. They're extending the scene hold. Don't start cleanup yet. Just document and wait for further instructions. I texted back confirmation and sat down on Delilah's bed, trying to process what I was seeing. My sister had covered one room in warnings about someone lying about their identity. Then she'd destroyed every photo of me in her personal space. The obvious conclusion was that she'd been having some kind of mental health crisis, that the divorce had triggered something, some paranoid break with reality where she'd fixated on me as a threat or imposter. But that didn't explain the blood downstairs, didn't explain the symbols on the kitchen wall, didn't explain why everyone's phones were going straight to voicemail while their cars sat in the driveway. I got up and searched Delilah's room more thoroughly, looking for anything that might explain what had happened. In her nightstand drawer, I found a journal. The last entry was dated yesterday. She came home today, Kira. Except it's not Kira. I don't know how to explain it. She looks exactly like my sister, sounds like her, has all her memories. But something's wrong. Something's missing. Like looking at a photograph instead of a person. Mom and Dad don't see it, or they don't want to see it. But I know, that thing is not my sister. I read the entry 3 times, my hands shaking. Delilah had written this yesterday, but I hadn't been here yesterday. I'd been home, alone, working on paperwork from other jobs. I hadn't seen my family in almost 2 weeks. I flipped back through earlier entries. The handwriting deteriorated the further back I went, becoming more erratic and desperate. It knows that I know. It watches me when it thinks I'm not looking. Its smile doesn't reach its eyes. Its laugh sounds wrong, like someone remembering how to laugh instead of actually finding something funny. I tried to tell Mom, but she got angry. Said I was being cruel. Said the divorce made me bitter and jealous of Kira's stable life. But I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. That thing is not my sister. Dad won't listen either. He says I need therapy. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But I swear on everything I love, the woman living in this house is not Kira Okafor. She's something else wearing her face. The entries went back 3 weeks, which meant whatever Delilah had been experiencing or imagining or believing had started right around the time she moved back home after her divorce. Right around the time she would have been vulnerable and stressed and potentially unstable. But the timing bothered me. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled back through my messages with my family. 3 weeks ago, I texted my mom to say I'd be busy with work and wouldn't be able to visit for a while. She'd responded with understanding and a promise to save me leftovers from Sunday dinner. 2 weeks ago, my dad had called to ask about my car's check engine light. We'd talked for 20 minutes about potential issues. Normal father-daughter conversation. 10 days ago, Delilah had sent me a strange text. "When did you cut your hair?" I'd responded with confusion. "I didn't? It's the same length it's been for months." She'd never replied. I scrolled further back and found more oddities. My mother asking if I'd enjoyed the dinner I'd come over for, even though I hadn't visited. My father thanking me for helping him clean the garage, which I definitely hadn't done. Text messages referencing conversations I'd never had, visits I'd never made, interactions that had never occurred, but they were all dated, all timestamped, all preserved in my phone's memory as proof that, from my family's perspective, I had been present for all of these things. Either I was having massive memory blackouts, or someone else had been visiting my family. Someone who looked enough like me to fool my parents and father, but not quite right enough to fool my sister. I heard a sound downstairs. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the living room. My first thought was that the police officer had come inside to check on me, but something about the rhythm of the steps felt wrong, too measured, too purposeful. I stood up slowly, Delilah's journal still in my hand. "Officer, is that you?" No response. The footsteps continued, moving from the living room into the kitchen. I could track their progress by the slight creaking of floorboards I'd memorized as a child. Growing up in this house meant knowing every sound it made, every spot where the wood complained under weight. Whoever was downstairs was heading toward the stairs. I moved to the bedroom door and looked out into the hallway. The light I'd left on in the guest room was off now. The hallway was dark except for the faint glow from the master bedroom seeping under the police-taped door. The footsteps reached the base of the stairs and started ascending. Slow, methodical. One step every 3 seconds, like whoever was climbing wanted to be heard, wanted me to know they were coming. I pulled out my phone to call the police officer outside, but there was no signal. Full bars a minute ago, now nothing. Just the spinning wheel of a phone trying and failing to connect to a network that should be there, but wasn't. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I could see a silhouette in the darkness, backlit by the faint light from the master bedroom. A woman's shape, average height, familiar build. The figure stepped forward into the hallway, and I saw her face in the dim light. It was me, not similar, not close, exactly me. Same face, same build, same hair length and style. She was even wearing clothes I owned. A gray hoodie I'd bought 3 months ago and a pair of jeans I'd worn earlier this week. The thing that looked like me tilted its head slightly and smiled. The expression was almost right, but not quite. Like someone who'd studied how I smiled and was reproducing it from memory rather than genuine emotion. "Hello, Kira," it said in my voice. Perfect pitch, perfect cadence, perfect everything. "I wondered when you'd finally come home." I backed up slowly, my training warring with my instinct to run. Every protocol I'd learned said to retreat from threats, secure the scene, call for backup. But I couldn't look away from this thing that wore my face. "What are you?" The question came out steadier than I felt. The not me laughed, and the sound was wrong in exactly the way Delilah had described. Like an approximation of laughter rather than the real thing. "I'm you. At least, I'm a better version of you. The version your parents always wished you'd been. More attentive, more present, more willing to prioritize family over work." It took another step closer. Delilah figured it out, you know. She was always the smart one. Noticed the little things that didn't quite add up. The gaps in memory. The slightly wrong reactions to old stories, the way I couldn't quite remember which drawer the silverware lived in even though I supposedly grew up here. I felt the doorframe behind me. Realized I'd backed up as far as I could go. "Where are they? Where are my parents? And Delilah?" "Hospital, like the police officer told you." The not me's smile widened. "Delilah tried to expose me tonight at dinner, brought out old photo albums, asked me questions about childhood memories she knew I couldn't answer accurately. Your father thought she was having a breakdown. Your mother tried to calm everyone down. But Delilah kept pushing, kept insisting I was an imposter. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen and said she'd prove I wasn't human, said I'd bleed differently or something. The thing paused, its expression shifting to something almost sad. She was wrong about the blood. I bleed just like you do. Red and warm and very, very real. My stomach turned over. You killed her? No, it said simply. I defended myself. When someone comes at you with a knife, self-defense is justified. Your father tried to stop her, got caught in the struggle. Your mother called 911. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of blood, but they're all alive. All at County General getting treated for various lacerations and stab wounds and psychological trauma from watching their youngest daughter have a complete psychotic break. The way it said psychotic break made it clear that's how the story had been reported. That's what the police believed. That's what my parents probably believed too. Delilah, the recently divorced woman living back home with her parents, had snapped and attacked her own sister with a knife. Classic case of mental illness and family violence. No one would ever believe the truth. Why? I asked. Why me? Why my family? The not me tilted its head the other way, studying me. Because you made it so easy. You kept your family at arm's length, focused on work, on maintaining emotional distance, on staying separate from their lives. There was a shape of you in this family, a sister-daughter shaped hole that you barely bothered to fill. So I filled it instead. And honestly, I'm better at it than you ever were. It wasn't wrong. I had been distant, had used work as an excuse to avoid family dinners and holidays and the complicated emotional labor of maintaining close relationships. It had been easier to clean up strangers' biological matter than deal with my mother's passive-aggressive comments about my life choices or my father's disappointment that I hadn't pursued a more traditional career or Delilah's neediness after her marriage fell apart. I'd created space between myself and my family, and something had noticed that space and decided to occupy it. What are you? I asked again, because it still hadn't really answered. The not me's expression shifted into something harder to read. I'm what fills empty spaces. I'm what grows in the gaps between people. I'm the thing that moves into your life when you're not paying attention and makes itself at home. It took another step forward, close enough now that I could smell it. It smelled like my shampoo, my deodorant, my detergent. It had copied everything down to the smallest detail. Here's what's going to happen, Kira. You're going to leave. Get in your van, drive away, and never come back. I'll keep being you for your family. I'll visit them regularly, call them weekly, be the daughter and sister you never bothered to be. They'll never know the difference. They'll actually be happier this way. And if I don't leave, my hand tightened on Delilah's journal, the only weapon I had. Then there will be another tragic incident. The real Kira, overcome with grief about her sister's mental breakdown, comes to the family home and dies by suicide. Or maybe a terrible accident during the cleanup. So much blood already here, so many biohazards. Easy for something to go wrong. It leaned closer, its face inches from mine. I've worked very hard to build this life. I'm not giving it up just because the original decided to finally show some interest in her family. I made a decision. Maybe not the smart one, but the only one I could live with. I shoved past the not me and ran for the stairs. Delilah's journal clutched to my chest. Behind me, I heard it sigh with what sounded like genuine disappointment. Really? You're going to make this difficult? I hit the stairs at full speed, taking them two at a time. My plan was simple. Get to my van, get to the hospital, tell someone, anyone, what was happening. Even if they didn't believe me, even if they thought I was as crazy as they thought Delilah was, at least I'd have tried. I made it to the living room before it caught me. Its hand closed around my ankle, yanking me off balance. I went down hard, my chin hitting the blood-stained hardwood with enough force to make me see stars. The journal flew from my hands, sliding across the floor. The not me crouched over me, its weight pressing me down. Up close, I could see the tiny imperfections. A mole on its neck that was slightly the wrong shade. Fingernails that were just a fraction too long. Eyes that didn't quite track movements the way human eyes should, like it was seeing me half a second in the past. You should have left, it said. And for the first time its voice sounded different from mine, deeper, with harmonics that made my teeth ache. I gave you an out. I was trying to be merciful. It grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. I felt its other hand pressing against my throat, fingers finding the pulse point, not choking me, not yet, just reminding me how easily it could. Let me show you something, it said. Let me show you what I really am. Its face began to change, not dramatically, not like a movie monster transformation. Subtle shifts, features sliding slightly out of alignment. The nose becoming just a fraction too wide, the mouth stretching just a bit too far, the eyes losing their human warmth and becoming flat and reflective like a doll's glass eyes. This was what Delilah had seen, what she'd tried to tell our parents about. This thing that could almost pass for human but couldn't quite maintain the disguise under stress or scrutiny. I'm old, it said, its voice continuing to deepen and distort. Older than your species. I've been wearing faces since before your ancestors learned to make fire. I've been mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, children and elders. I fill the spaces you create with your negligence and your selfishness and your failure to cherish what you have. Its grip on my throat tightened slightly. You left a space, Kira. You abandoned your family emotionally long before I ever arrived. I just made that abandonment literal. I replaced you with something that actually cares about them, that shows up for them, that gives them the daughter and sister they deserved. It wasn't completely wrong, and that made it so much worse. I had been a bad daughter, a distant sister. I had prioritized everything else over family, and now something had noticed that neglect and exploited it, sliding into my life like water filling a crack. Please, I managed to say around the pressure on my throat. Please don't kill me. The not me laughed again, that awful approximation of humor. Kill you? I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to give you a choice. It released my throat but kept me pinned. Option 1. You leave. Disappear. Start a new life somewhere far from here. I'll tell your family you couldn't handle the guilt of Delilah's breakdown, that you moved away to escape the memories. They'll be sad, but they'll understand. They'll have me to comfort them through it. Option 2? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. Option 2. You try to expose me. You tell people what you've seen, and I make sure everyone knows you're having the same psychotic break as your sister. After all, you showed up at a crime scene where your family was injured, contaminating evidence, acting erratic. Easy to spin that as mental illness running in the family, especially when I'm the calm, rational Kira telling doctors how worried I am about my original self's declining mental state. It leaned closer, its breath cold against my ear. They'll believe me, you know. I've been cultivating relationships with them for weeks. I'm their daughter, their sister. You're just a stranger who looks like her. Who would you believe? I wanted to fight. Wanted to claw at its face and scream for help and refuse to surrender. But I could feel its strength, far beyond what a normal human should have. Could see the wrongness beneath its skin becoming more apparent as it dropped the pretense of humanity. This thing could kill me easily if it wanted to. The only reason I was still alive was because it was offering me a choice. How long? I asked. How long have you been pretending to be me? 3 weeks. Since right after Delilah moved back home. Your mother was so stressed about her youngest daughter's failed marriage, so worried about how to help her. She wished you would visit more, be more present, be the support system Delilah needed. I heard that wish, and I answered it. 3 weeks of this thing living my life. 3 weeks of it sitting at my family's dinner table, sleeping in what it thought was my childhood room, building relationships with my parents while I'd been across town, completely oblivious. There are more of us, you know, it continued. More of my kind. We're everywhere, filling in the gaps humans create. The absent father who suddenly starts showing up to his kids' games. The neglectful spouse who suddenly becomes attentive after years of emotional distance. The friend who finally starts returning calls after months of silence. We're there, wearing human faces, being better versions of the people you failed to be. The words hit harder than any physical blow. So what? You're some kind of karma? Cosmic punishment for being a bad family member? We're a mirror, it said. We reflect back what you could have been if you'd actually tried. We show people what they're missing when they tolerate neglect and absence from those who should love them. Sometimes our presence is temporary, just long enough to teach a lesson. Sometimes it becomes permanent, when the original proves they never deserved the relationships they abandoned. It released me finally, standing up and backing away. So, what's it going to be, Kira? Option 1 or option 2? I stayed on the floor, blood from the living room carpet seeping into my clothes. 6 years of cleaning crime scenes had taught me that some stains never completely come out. Some contamination goes too deep to ever fully remediate. Maybe I was one of those stains. Maybe I'd contaminated my family relationships so thoroughly that there was no cleaning it up, no going back to what we'd been before. If I choose option 1, I said slowly, you'll really take care of them? You won't hurt them? I'll be the daughter and sister you never were, it promised. I'll visit weekly. I'll remember birthdays and anniversaries. I'll actually listen when they talk instead of waiting for the conversation to end. I'll be present in all the ways you weren't. I thought about Delilah in the hospital, probably sedated and restrained, being treated for a psychotic break that wasn't actually psychotic at all. She'd been right. She'd seen the truth. And for seeing it, for trying to protect our family from an imposter, she'd been labeled crazy and violent. If I stayed, I'd end up the same way, or worse. But if I left, if I walked away and let this thing keep my life, my family would never know the difference. They'd be happy, probably happier than they'd been with the real me. I need to see them, I said. Before I decide, I need to see my family at the hospital. The not me considered this, its features settling back into a perfect copy of my own face. Fine, but I'm coming with you. And if you try anything, if you say one word about what I really am, I'll make sure you never leave that hospital except in restraints, understood? I nodded. What choice did I have? We drove to County General in my work van, the not me sitting in the passenger seat, humming along to the radio like this was a normal family visit, like we weren't a human woman and the creature that had stolen her identity, heading to see the family that had been caught in the middle. What do I call you? I asked, as we pulled into the hospital parking lot. You're not actually me. Do you have a name? It considered the question. I've had many names over the centuries, but for now, you can call me Kira, since that's who I am to everyone who matters. We walked into the hospital together. To anyone watching, we would have looked like identical twins, both wearing similar casual clothes, both moving with the same tired slump of people who'd been awake too long. The front desk directed us to the third floor, trauma unit. My parents were in room 314. Delilah was in the psychiatric wing, separate from them. "We'll see your parents first," the not me said quietly. "They need to see us, being supportive and concerned. It'll help reinforce the narrative that Delilah was having a breakdown." Room 314 was semi-private, with my parents in bed separated by a curtain. My mother saw us first. Her face was pale and her left arm was bandaged from wrist to elbow. "Kira," she said, and her relief was so genuine it made my chest ache. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're here." She didn't seem to notice there were two of us. Her eyes went to the not me standing slightly ahead of me, and that was the Kira she saw, the one she'd been building a relationship with for 3 weeks, the one who'd been present and attentive and everything I hadn't been. My father was more heavily bandaged, with IV lines running into both arms. He'd lost more blood, taken more damage trying to separate Delilah from the thing he thought was his daughter. His eyes found me, the real me, standing in the doorway. For a moment I thought he'd see the difference, thought he'd recognize his actual daughter versus the imposter. But his gaze slid past me to the not me, and he smiled weakly. "There's my girl. I knew you'd come." The not me moved to my father's bedside, taking his hand gently. "Of course I came. I'm so sorry this happened. I'm so sorry about Delilah." "It's not your fault," my mother said from her bed. Something's been wrong with her for weeks. We should have seen it, should have gotten her help sooner." "Can we see her?" the not me asked. "Can we visit Delilah?" My father shook his head. "They have her sedated and under observation. Doctor said she was having paranoid delusions, accused you of being some kind of imposter or monster. She wouldn't stop saying it even after everything." He trailed off, his eyes going distant with the memory of his youngest daughter attacking his oldest with a knife. "We'll get her help," the not me said with my voice, with perfect compassion and concern. "Whatever she needs. Therapy, medication, hospitalization if necessary. We'll make sure she's taken care of." I stood in the doorway watching this thing play my role, say my lines, be my better self. My parents believed every word. They saw their daughter being strong and supportive in a crisis, exactly what they needed. They had no idea they were trusting a creature that had admitted to being ancient and inhuman, something that wore faces like I wore my cleaning gear, practical tools for a specific job. "Mom, Dad," I said, finally finding my voice. "Can I talk to you about something?" They both looked at me then, and I saw the confusion in their eyes, saw them trying to process why there were two Kiras in the room. "What?" my mother started, then stopped, looked at me, then at the not me, then back at me. I don't understand." The not me moved quickly, positioning itself between me and my parents. "Mom, Dad, this is going to sound crazy, but that's not actually me. I think it's someone who looks like me. Maybe related to what happened with Delilah, some kind of shared delusion or hallucination from the trauma." Its voice was calm, rational, exactly what you'd want to hear from a reliable daughter in a crisis. "No," I said, stepping forward. "No, that's not true. I'm Kira. I'm your daughter. That thing has been pretending to be me for the past 3 weeks. It's what Delilah saw, what she was trying to warn you about." My father's face went pale. "Oh God, it's genetic. The delusions are genetic. I'm not delusional." My voice came out too loud, too desperate. "Please, you have to listen to me. I'm the real Kira. I clean crime scenes for Precision BioClean. I drive a white work van. I live in an apartment on Sterling Avenue. I haven't visited you in 2 weeks because I've been busy with work, and I'm sorry about that. I'm so sorry, but that thing is not me." My mother was crying now, her good hand pressed to her mouth. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." The not me pulled out its phone, my phone that I'd never given it, and dialed. "Yes, this is Kira Okafor at County General Hospital, 3rd floor. We have a situation. A woman who looks exactly like me is here claiming to be me, distressing my parents who are recovering from a violent assault. Yes, she seems to be having some kind of psychological episode. No, I don't think she's dangerous, just confused. But my parents have been through enough tonight." It looked at me with something almost like pity. "You had a choice, Kira. You chose wrong." Security arrived within minutes. 2 large men who listened to the not me's calm explanation about a confused woman, possibly a twin or relative, who was having a mental health crisis. They approached me gently but firmly. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us. We're going to take you somewhere quiet where you can talk to a doctor." "No, you don't understand. That's not me. I'm me. Run my fingerprints, check my ID, call my boss Leonard at Precision BioClean. He knows me. He can verify who I am." But the not me was already holding up identification. My identification. My driver's license with my photo, my credit cards, my insurance card, everything I should have had in my wallet, which was currently in my van in the parking lot. "I think she might have stolen my wallet," the not me said sadly. "I wondered where it went. She must have taken it while I was saying goodbye to the police officer at my parents' house." The security guards exchanged a look. "Ma'am, where's your identification?" "In my van, in the parking lot. I can show you." They escorted me out of the room. the not-me's sad expression following us. My last view of my parents was their confused, frightened faces as they clutched each other, trying to understand why their daughter was apparently duplicating or why strangers who looked like her were having breakdowns in their hospital room. In the elevator, I tried again. Please, just look in my van. White cargo van, Precision BioClean logo on the side. My wallet's in there with all my ID. That'll prove who I am. The taller security guard nodded. We'll check. But you need to understand, ma'am. If you're impersonating someone, if you've stolen identification, that's a serious crime. They took me to a small office and had me wait while they verified my story. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, my mind racing. Everything I'd said was true and could be verified. My van was in the lot. My wallet was in the van. My boss Leonard could confirm my identity. But the not me had weeks of relationship building with my family, had photos and memories and shared experiences, had become Kira in every way that mattered to the people who loved her. The tall security guard came back 20 minutes later with my wallet, looking troubled. We found this in a white van registered to Precision BioClean. The ID matches your face. He paused. But ma'am, there's already someone in this hospital claiming to be you. Same name, same basic appearance, same family. We need to figure out what's going on here. Did you call my boss? Leonard Greaves at Precision BioClean? We called. Got his voicemail. It's 4:30 in the morning. Most people are asleep. He sat down across from me. Look, I don't know what's happening here. Identity theft, twin sisters who don't know about each other, some kind of elaborate scam. But someone's lying and we need to figure out who. Can I see my sister? Delilah Okafor. She's in the psychiatric wing. She's the one who was attacked tonight, who tried to expose the imposter. She'll know who I am. The guard considered this. She's under sedation, but I suppose it won't hurt to try. If she can identify you clearly, that might help sort this out. They escorted me to the psychiatric wing, through locked doors and past nurses' stations where staff eyed me with curiosity. Delilah's room was at the end of a long hallway, its door marked with warning labels about patient aggression risk. She was awake when we entered, lying in bed with restraints on her wrists, not tight, just enough to prevent her from hurting herself or pulling out her IV. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. When she saw me, her whole body went rigid. No, 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 get it away from me, she was screaming, thrashing against the restraints. That's not Kira. That's not my sister. It's the thing that's been pretending. Don't let it near me. A nurse rushed in, checking Delilah's vitals while she continued to scream. You need to leave. You're agitating the patient. But I'm her sister. I'm the real Kira. She knows me. She's the only one who can tell the difference between me and the imposter. The nurse looked at me with exhaustion and pity. Ma'am, you're the second person tonight to claim to be Kira Okafor. The first one was here an hour ago, very concerned about her sister, very calm and rational. Now you're here getting her worked up into another episode. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. An hour ago? But I was. The other me was with our parents an hour ago. How could it be in two places at once? But even as I said it, I understood. If there was one of these things, there could be more. If one had replaced me, others could have replaced other absent people. The thing wearing my face might not be alone. There might be a whole network of them, coordinating, supporting each other's cover stories. The security guard took my arm gently. Ma'am, I think you need to talk to someone. A doctor, maybe. This situation is very unusual, and I'm concerned about your mental state. I'm not crazy, I said, but I could hear the desperation in my voice. Could hear how I sounded exactly like every person having a mental breakdown who insists they're fine. Please, just let me talk to my sister when she's calmer. Let me prove who I am. They took me to the emergency psychiatric evaluation room. A bare space with a table and two chairs and a camera in the corner recording everything. A tired-looking doctor came in after a few minutes, introducing herself as Dr. Rashida Klein. I understand you're claiming to be Kira Okafor, but there's some confusion about your identity. Can you walk me through what's happening from your perspective? I told her everything. The dispatch to my family's house, finding the blood and the symbols, reading Delilah's journal, encountering the thing that wore my face. It all came spilling out in a rush of words that I knew sounded insane, even as I was saying them. Dr. Klein listened patiently, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. That's quite a story. Very detailed, very internally consistent. But you understand it involves some elements that aren't, well, scientifically possible. Creatures that steal identities and perfectly impersonate people. That's more fantasy or horror than reality. I know how it sounds, but it's true. That thing admitted what it was. It told me it's been pretending to be me for 3 weeks, building relationships with my family while I was completely unaware. And why would this creature do that? What's its motivation? It said it fills empty spaces, that I'd been neglectful of my family, emotionally distant, and it took advantage of that gap to replace me. Dr. Klein made another note. So this creature is essentially punishing you for being a bad daughter and sister? That's an interesting psychological element. Guilt and self-blame manifesting as an external threat. I'm not making this up. I'm not having a breakdown. Everything I've told you can be verified. The blood at my parents' house, Delilah's journal warning about an imposter, the fact that my family thinks they've been seeing me for weeks when I haven't actually visited. Check the records. Check phone logs and credit card statements. You'll see I'm telling the truth about not being there. She nodded slowly. We can certainly verify some of those details. But even if everything you say about your whereabouts is accurate, that doesn't prove the existence of an identity-stealing creature. There could be other explanations. A very dedicated stalker who's been impersonating you. A twin you didn't know about who's been inserting themselves into your family. Then test us. Do a DNA test. Compare my DNA to the other person claiming to be me. That'll show we're not related, that I'm the original. That's actually a good idea, Dr. Klein agreed, though it will take a few days to get results. In the meantime, I'd like to keep you here for observation. Just for 72 hours. Make sure you're stable. Make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. I wanted to argue, wanted to refuse and demand to leave, but I was exhausted and scared and had nowhere else to go. If I left the hospital, the not me would find me, would make good on its threats to eliminate me permanently. At least here I was safe. At least here there were witnesses and cameras and people who would notice if something happened to me. Okay, I said quietly. 72 hours. But I'm telling you, when the DNA results come back, they'll prove I'm right. They admitted me to the psychiatric ward, to a room 2 doors down from Delilah's. I could hear her sometimes, still screaming about the thing that wasn't her sister, still trying to warn people about the imposter. No one believed her. They'd increased her medication, adding antipsychotics to help with what they diagnosed as acute paranoid schizophrenia brought on by the stress of her divorce. I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about choices and consequences. Thinking about how I'd prioritized work over family, kept myself distant to avoid complicated emotions, created the exact conditions that had allowed something inhuman to slide into my place. The not me was right. I had been a bad daughter, a neglectful sister. I'd left a gap, and something had filled it. The question was what to do now. Even if the DNA test proved I was the real Kira Okafor, would it matter? The creature had spent 3 weeks building relationships, being present, showing my family the kind of attention and care they deserved. It had been a better version of me. Maybe the kindest thing would be to let it keep my life, let it continue being the daughter and sister my family wanted. I could disappear, start over somewhere else, try to be better with whatever new relationships I built. But that would mean abandoning Delilah, leaving her locked in the psychiatric ward, labeled as crazy for seeing the truth, letting everyone believe she'd had a violent, psychotic break instead of a justified attempt to protect her family from a predator. I couldn't do that to her. Whatever else I'd failed at, I couldn't fail at this. Around noon, I heard a commotion in the hallway, raised voices, something crashing. I got up and looked through the small window in my door. The not me was there, talking to the nurses. From this angle, seeing it interact with other people, I could spot the tiny imperfections Delilah had noticed, the smile that was slightly too perfect, the way it didn't blink quite often enough, the movements that were just a fraction too smooth, like it was gliding instead of walking. "I'm here to see my sister," it was saying. "Delilah Okafor. I was told she's been asking for me." The nurse checked her clipboard. "I'm sorry, but your sister is currently in isolation. She's been very agitated and we need to keep visitors to a minimum. Please, I'm family. I need to see her. I need to make sure she's okay." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. And if she becomes distressed, you'll need to leave immediately." I watched through my door window as the not me entered Delilah's room. Heard my sister's screams start up again. "Get out! Get away from me! You're not her!" The not me stayed for exactly 5 minutes, its voice too low for me to hear what it was saying. When it emerged, it was wiping away tears that looked absolutely genuine. "She's worse than I thought," it told the nurse. "Thank you for taking care of her. I know it's not easy." After it left, I heard Delilah sobbing, not screaming anymore, just this broken, hopeless crying. I buzzed for a nurse. "Please, I need to see my sister. I know I'm in observation too, but we're family. We need each other right now." The nurse who responded was different from the one who dealt with the not me. Younger, more sympathetic. "You're the sister too? The other one?" "I'm the real one. The person who was just here is the imposter Delilah's been warning everyone about. Please, just let me try to talk to her. Let me show her I'm real." The nurse considered this, probably weighing regulations against compassion. 5 minutes, same as the other person. But if she gets upset, you leave immediately. Her mental state is very fragile right now. She escorted me to Delilah's room. My sister was curled in a ball on the bed, restraints removed now that she'd calmed down. When she heard the door open, she flinched. "Please, no more. I can't take any more." "Delilah," I said softly. "It's me. It's really me. Not the thing that's been pretending. Your real sister, Kira." She looked up slowly, her one good eye focusing on my face. For a long moment, she just stared. Then her expression crumbled into relief and fresh tears. "Kira, is it really you? How do I know it's really you? Remember when you were 7 and you broke your arm falling down the stairs? I was supposed to be watching you, but I was on the phone with my friend Valerie, not paying attention. You never told Mom and Dad it was my fault. You said you just slipped." Delilah's breath caught. The thing, it tried to reference that story, but it got the details wrong. Said you were watching TV, not on the phone. Said I was 6, not 7. Because it doesn't actually have my memories. It has what it learned from observing our family and reading things and piecing together a history from fragments. But it's not really me. I sat on the edge of her bed carefully. I'm so sorry, Delilah. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I was so distant that I created room for something like that to take my place. You were right to try to expose it. You were right about everything. She reached out and grabbed my hand, gripping it so tightly it hurt. They think I'm crazy. Mom and Dad think I attacked you. Attacked it. Because I'm having a psychotic break. They're never going to believe the truth. Then we'll make them believe. The DNA test will prove I'm the real Kira Okafor. That thing can look like me, sound like me, but it can't fake DNA. Delilah shook her head. It told me something. Just now, when it was in here pretending to be concerned. It said, even if the DNA test proves you're the original, it won't matter. It's already filed legal documents claiming you're an imposter who's been stalking the family. It has emails, text messages, photos, 3 weeks of documented history showing it living as Kira Okafor. You have nothing. Who do you think a court will believe? My stomach dropped. That's not possible. It can't have that much documentation. It said something else too. Delilah's voice dropped to a whisper. It said there are more of them. Lots more. They have lawyers. They have people in positions of power who are either compromised or replaced. They've been doing this for decades, maybe longer, building infrastructure to protect themselves, to make sure anyone who tries to expose them gets labeled as crazy or criminal. I thought about the security guards who'd found my wallet, but still looked at me with suspicion. The doctor who'd listened sympathetically, but clearly thought I was delusional. How easy it would be for the not me to paint me as an unhinged stalker, obsessed with stealing someone else's life. So what do we do? I asked. How do we fight something that's this organized? Delilah was quiet for a moment. It's journal. The journal I kept with all my observations about it being wrong. Did you find it? Yes. It's still at the house. I dropped it when the thing attacked me. Get it. That journal has dates, specific incidents, details about the thing's behavior that prove it's not human. It's not much, but it's something. And maybe if we go public, if we make enough noise, other people who've noticed these things will come forward too. We can't be the only ones who've seen them. She had a point. If these creatures had been replacing people for decades, there had to be others who'd noticed. Others who'd been labeled as crazy or paranoid, but who were actually seeing the truth. I'll get the journal, I promised. And then we're going to figure out how to expose these things for what they really are. We spent the rest of the 5 minutes planning. How to get out of the hospital without triggering security. Where to go that would be safe from the not me. Who we could trust with the truth. By the time the nurse came to take me back to my room, we had the basics of a plan. That night, I waited until the psych ward was at its quietest. Around 3 a.m., when most of the staff was focused on paperwork and monitoring rather than actively checking on patients. I'd convinced the evening nurse I was feeling much better, cooperative and calm, ready to accept whatever treatment plan Dr. Klein recommended. She'd relaxed the observation protocols, confident I wasn't a flight risk. I slipped out of my room and down the hallway to the staff break room. Found a set of scrubs someone had left hanging on a chair. Changed quickly and pulled my hair back into a ponytail that looked more professional than my current disheveled state. With a stolen ID badge clipped to the scrubs, I looked enough like a night shift nurse to avoid immediate questions. The hardest part was getting Delilah out. She was still considered a danger to herself and others, monitored more closely than I was. But the night staff was stretched thin, one nurse trying to cover 8 patients. When she stepped away to deal with another patient having a crisis, I slipped into Delilah's room. Come on, we're leaving. Delilah was already awake, already dressed in the street clothes they'd put in her room's closet. She'd been waiting, hoping I'd come through. We made it past the nurse's station by looking confident and purposeful, like we belonged exactly where we were. The elevator took us down to the main floor. We walked out through the emergency room entrance, past security who were too busy dealing with incoming ambulances to pay attention to 2 women in scrubs leaving the building. My van was still in the parking lot where I'd left it hours ago. We climbed in, and I started driving. No destination in mind except away from the hospital, away from the not me, away from everyone who thought we were crazy. Where are we going? Delilah asked. Back to the house. We need that journal, and I need to document the crime scene properly, get photos of everything before the police release it, or before that thing has a chance to clean up evidence. Delilah nodded, then looked at me seriously. Kira, what happened there tonight, what I did with the knife, I really thought I was protecting our family. I really believed that thing was going to hurt you, hurt all of us. I know, and you were right. It did hurt people. It hurt Dad trying to defend itself. It orchestrated a situation where you'd look violent and unstable. It manipulated everything perfectly. We drove in silence for a few minutes before Delilah spoke again. Do you think Mom and Dad will ever believe us? Even with evidence, even with proof, will they be able to accept that the daughter they've been bonding with for 3 weeks is actually a monster? I didn't have a good answer to that. The not me had done exactly what it promised. It had been a better daughter than I ever was. More present, more attentive, more willing to show up and put in the emotional labor that relationships require. Our parents might actually prefer it to the real me. We reached Maple Grove Lane around 4:00 a.m. The police tape was still up, but the officer who'd been watching the scene was gone, probably reassigned once they'd determined it was a straightforward case of mental illness and family violence. I used my company key to unlock the front door. Inside, the house was dark and still smelled like blood. My cleaning equipment was still where I'd left it, untouched. Start looking for the journal, I told Delilah. I'm going to document everything with photos and video. We need a complete record before anyone tries to alter the scene. Delilah headed upstairs while I started in the living room, photographing the blood patterns and the overturned furniture and the shattered glass. My phone's camera captured everything in harsh detail. The arterial spray that showed violence and panic, the drag marks that told a story of struggle. Evidence that this had been more than just a troubled woman attacking her sister. This had been something calculated and deliberate. In the kitchen, I photographed the symbols on the wall, those geometric shapes that still made my eyes hurt to look at directly. I'd seen a lot of strange things in 6 years of crime scene cleaning, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt actively hostile to human perception. "Kira!" Delilah's voice called from upstairs, sharp with alarm. "You need to see this." I ran up the stairs and found her in the guest room, the one with all the papers taped to the walls. But something had changed since I'd been here before. The papers were different. Instead of repeated warnings about someone not being who they claimed to be, these papers were covered in accusations about me. "Kira has been acting strange for months. I don't think she's taking her medication." Saw Kira talking to herself in the bathroom. She didn't realize I was watching. The things she was saying didn't make sense. "I'm scared of what Kira might do. She's not herself anymore. Need to document everything in case something happens." The handwriting was still Delilah's, but the content had been completely changed. Someone had replaced every warning about the not me with warnings about me, creating a paper trail of an unstable, potentially dangerous older sister. "I never wrote this," Delilah said, her voice shaking. I would never say these things about you. I know. But this is what the police will see if they come back. This is what establishes you having a reason to attack me with a knife. You were scared. Protecting yourself and our parents from your dangerous older sister who'd been showing signs of mental illness for months. I started pulling papers down, stuffing them into my work bag as evidence. If the not me had gone to this much trouble to create false documentation, it meant we were a real threat to its cover. It was trying to discredit us preemptively, making sure that even if we presented evidence, it could be dismissed as the fabrications of two mentally ill sisters, reinforcing each other's delusions. "The journal," I said. "Where did you drop it?" Delilah led me back downstairs to the living room. "It should be right here where I saw you drop it." But the floor was empty. No journal. We searched the entire room, moving furniture, checking under cushions and behind curtains. Nothing. The journal was gone. "It took it," Delilah said. "Of course it took it. That was the one piece of evidence that could prove everything I'd observed, all the details about its behavior that weren't quite right. It must have come back and cleaned up after we left." I wanted to scream. Every piece of evidence we'd counted on was either gone or altered. The journal missing. The papers upstairs rewritten. Even my phone's photos, when I checked them, were corrupted. Every image I'd taken tonight showed nothing but static and distortion, like the camera had been exposed to electromagnetic interference. The thing wearing my face had been thorough. "We need to leave," I said. "If it knows we escaped the hospital, it'll be looking for us. This house isn't safe." We were halfway to the door when the lights came on, flooding the room with harsh illumination. The not me was standing in the doorway, and it wasn't alone. 3 others were with it, 2 men and a woman, all of them with that same slightly too perfect appearance. All of them wearing faces that probably belonged to people who'd been careless with their relationships, who'd created gaps that these creatures could exploit. "Hello, Kira," the not me said pleasantly. "Hello, Delilah. I knew you'd come back here. You're both so predictable, always trying to gather evidence to build a case to expose what you don't understand." One of the men stepped forward. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. We offered you a peaceful exit. We would have let you walk away, start over somewhere new. But you had to fight, had to try to reclaim something you never valued in the first place. What are you really?" I asked, backing up slowly with Delilah beside me. "You said you're old, that you've been doing this for centuries. But what are you actually? Where did you come from?" The woman smiled. "We're what happens when humanity forgets to value connection. We're the consequence of negligence and absence. We grow in the spaces between people, in the gaps created when someone should love you but doesn't. We're as old as civilization itself, as old as the first time someone chose duty over family, work over presence, solitude over connection. You're parasites," Delilah said. "You feed on broken relationships and loneliness. We're mirrors," the not me corrected. "We reflect what you could have been if you'd actually tried, and sometimes we're better than the originals. Sometimes the people we replace don't deserve to be missed." The 3 strangers spread out, blocking our escape routes. We were surrounded, outnumbered, in a house where we'd already been painted as violent and unstable. If we disappeared now, it would look like we'd run away. If we died here, it would look like a suicide pact or an accident. The creatures had set the perfect trap. "Last chance," the not me said. "Walk away, leave the state, change your names, start over, or we end this tonight, and your family will never know what really happened to you." I looked at Delilah, saw the fear in her eyes, but also the determination. We'd come too far to surrender now. We're not going anywhere, I said. This is our family. This is our life. You don't get to take it just because we weren't perfect. The not me sighed. Then you've made your choice. The three strangers moved in simultaneously, but they'd underestimated one thing. I'd spent 6 years cleaning crime scenes. I knew how to handle biological hazards, knew which chemicals could burn skin and which could cause respiratory distress, and I had a van full of industrial cleaning supplies right outside. Delilah, run for the van! I shouted, grabbing the nearest object, a heavy table lamp, and throwing it at the closest creature. It connected with his head, staggering him. Delilah and I bolted for the door, shoulder-checking the woman out of our way. She grabbed my arm, her grip inhumanly strong, but I twisted free and kept running. We made it to the van and I grabbed my equipment, industrial-strength bleach, ammonia, and acids that could dissolve biological matter. I started spraying wildly as the creatures emerged from the house, creating a chemical barrier between us. "Get in the van!" I yelled at Delilah, still spraying. The chemicals hit the not-me's skin and it screamed. Not a human scream, but something multitonal and wrong that made my ears ring. Where the chemicals touched, its skin began to bubble and smoke, the disguise breaking down. I dove into the van and gunned the engine, tires squealing as we peeled away from Maple Grove Lane. In the rearview mirror, I saw the creatures standing in the driveway watching us go. The not-me's face was half melted, showing something underneath that wasn't human. Something that looked almost like static, like visual noise. Like reality couldn't quite decide what shape it should have. "Did you see that?" Delilah asked, breathless. "Did you see what they really look like under the disguise?" I saw. I documented. I held up my phone. Got video of everything. The chemical reaction, the skin breaking down, what's underneath. This is evidence that can't be dismissed as mental illness. We drove for hours, putting distance between ourselves and whatever those things were. Eventually, I pulled into a 24-hour diner in a town I didn't recognize, somewhere far from everything familiar. We sat in a corner booth with coffee that tasted like motor oil and eggs that were probably fine, but I couldn't taste through the adrenaline. "What now?" Delilah asked. "We have evidence, but where do we take it? Who's going to believe us?" I thought about the doctor at the hospital who'd listened sympathetically, but clearly thought I was delusional. The security guards who'd found my wallet but still looked at me with suspicion. The police who'd labeled Delilah as psychotic without question. "We go public," I said. "Full exposure. Post the videos online. Send them to every journalist and researcher we can find. Make so much noise that they can't suppress it all. Some people won't believe us. Most people probably won't believe us. But some will. The ones who've seen these things before. The ones who've been dismissed and labeled as crazy. We find them. We connect with them. We build a network of people who know the truth." Delilah nodded slowly. "And our parents? What about Mom and Dad?" That was the question I'd been avoiding. Our parents were still at County General, still recovering, still believing that their youngest daughter had violently attacked their eldest during a psychotic episode, still trusting the creature that wore my face. "We can't save them right now," I said, and it hurt to admit. "The best thing we can do is expose what these creatures are, build enough evidence that eventually, our family will have to see the truth, even if it takes months, even if it takes years." I pulled out my phone and started uploading the videos to every platform I could think of. Social media, file-sharing sites, forums dedicated to paranormal experiences. Each upload was tagged with keywords that would help people find it. Real doppelgangers. Identity theft by non-human entities. Creatures that replace absent family members. Within hours, the videos had thousands of views. Some comments dismissed it as obviously fake, elaborate special effects. But others recognized what they were seeing. This happened to my brother. We thought he was having a breakdown when he said his girlfriend wasn't real. Nobody believed him. They put him in a hospital just like your sister. Is he still there? Could he be telling the truth? I've seen these things. Not often, but occasionally I'll meet someone who looks right but feels wrong in exactly the way you're describing. I always thought I was just being paranoid. Now I'm wondering if I was actually picking up on something real. There are more of them than you think. They're everywhere. In families, in workplaces, in positions of power. They've built entire support networks to protect each other and discredit anyone who tries to expose them. You're in danger just by posting this. That last comment made me nervous. But we'd already committed. Already burned our bridges with the life we'd had before. There was no going back now. Over the next few days, we drove from town to town, staying in cheap motels and using cash for everything. My phone started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were journalists wanting interviews. Others were people who claimed they'd had similar experiences, who'd seen these creatures or suspected a loved one had been replaced. And some calls were threats. Calm, measured voices warning us to delete the videos and stop spreading lies. Telling us that we were making things worse for ourselves, that we should accept the generous offer that had been extended and disappear quietly. We ignored the threats and started doing interviews. Local news first, small stations that were willing to give airtime to a weird story during slow news days, then larger outlets, true crime podcasts, paranormal investigation shows. We told our story over and over, showed our evidence, and answered every skeptical question as honestly as we could. The response was mixed. Some people believed us. Others thought we were either elaborate hoaxers or genuinely mentally ill sisters reinforcing each other's delusions. But the important thing was that people were paying attention. The story was spreading. A week after we went public, Leonard from Precision BioClean called me. "Kira, what the hell is going on? I've got someone claiming to be you telling me you've had a mental health crisis and need to be let go from your position. Then I've got you on the news talking about identity-stealing creatures. I don't know what to believe." Leonard, I need you to think. Have you noticed anything strange about the crime scenes you've sent me to over the past few years? Any patterns? Any situations that didn't quite add up? He was quiet for a long moment. There was that family 2 years ago. Murder-suicide. But the blood patterns never made sense to me. And the neighbors kept saying the husband who supposedly killed his wife and kids had been acting strange for months. Different. Like he wasn't the same person anymore. Do you still have the file? I have files on every job we've done. Why? I need you to look at the cases involving domestic violence or unexplained family deaths over the past 5 years. Look for patterns. Look for situations where someone close to the victim reported that the perpetrator seemed different or wrong before the incident occurred. If these creatures have been replacing people for decades, there should be a trail. There should be evidence in police reports and medical files and witness testimonies that everyone dismissed as traumatized people trying to make sense of senseless violence. Leonard agreed to look into it. 3 days later, he called back. "Kira, I found 23 cases in our region alone that match the pattern you described. Family members reporting that the victim or perpetrator had changed, seemed off, didn't quite act like themselves. In every case, those concerns were dismissed as stress or grief, or people reading too much into normal behavior variations. Can you send me those files? Officially? No. That would be a massive violation of client confidentiality and probably illegal. Unofficially? Check your email in about 10 minutes. The files Leonard sent were damning. Case after case where someone had noticed that a family member wasn't quite right, had tried to raise concerns, and been dismissed by everyone from police to therapists to other family members. In several cases, the person who'd noticed ended up dead or institutionalized, conveniently silenced before they could make too much noise about their observations. We added these files to our evidence collection and kept doing interviews, kept making noise, kept refusing to be silenced. A month after we'd fled the hospital, Detective Lynn from the police department that had investigated the incident at my parents' house contacted us. Miss Okafor, Kira, and Delilah. I've been reviewing the case file from the incident at Maple Grove Lane. There are some inconsistencies I'd like to discuss with you. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop in a busy area where there would be witnesses if anything went wrong. Detective Lynn was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat down across from us and pulled out a thick folder. "I've worked in law enforcement for 27 years, she said. In that time, I've seen a lot of things that don't make sense. Cases that should be straightforward but have elements that just don't add up. Your case is one of those." She opened the folder and pulled out crime scene photos. "The blood spatter patterns at your parents' house indicate multiple points of origin, not consistent with a single attacker wielding a knife. More consistent with several people bleeding in different locations simultaneously. But we only found evidence of 3 victims, your parents and Delilah." "What about the symbols on the kitchen wall?" I asked. "The geometric shapes drawn in blood. Did you analyze those?" Detective Lynn's expression darkened. "That's the thing. Those symbols aren't in any of our official documentation. No photos, no mention in the initial report. But I was there that night. I saw them. I took photos with my personal phone because something about them made me uneasy. When I went to file my report, the symbols had been removed from all official documentation. Someone with access to our evidence system scrubbed them completely." She pulled out her phone and showed us the photos she'd taken. The same disturbing geometric shapes I'd documented, the ones that hurt to look at directly. I started digging deeper, found 15 other cases in the past decade with similar patterns. Unexplained symbols at crime scenes that disappear from official records. Witnesses who report seeing things that don't make it into police reports. Evidence that gets lost or corrupted. Delilah leaned forward. "You believe us. You actually believe what we've been saying about these creatures." "I believe something is happening that we don't have a framework to understand," Detective Lynn said carefully. "I believe there are entities or individuals who've figured out how to manipulate our systems, our documentation, our perception of reality. Whether they're supernatural creatures or just extremely sophisticated criminals, I don't know. But they're real, and they're dangerous." She pulled out more documents. "I've been collecting cases quietly for years. Every time I tried to bring it to my superiors, I got shut down, told I was seeing patterns where none existed, told I needed to take some time off, maybe talk to a counselor. 2 other detectives who were investigating similar patterns retired early or transferred to different departments. One died in a car accident that was ruled mechanical failure, even though his car had just passed inspection the week before. So what do we do? I asked. How do we fight something that's infiltrated law enforcement, that can alter official records, that has enough power to silence anyone who gets too close to the truth? Detective Lynn was quiet for a moment, We build a case so airtight they can't ignore it. We document everything, create redundant backups, involve enough people that they can't silence all of us. And we accept that this is going to be dangerous, that we might not survive it, but at least we'll know we tried. Over the next 2 months, we became a team. Detective Lynn, Delilah, myself, Leonard, and a growing network of people who'd had experiences with these creatures. We called ourselves the Displaced, people who'd been pushed out of their own lives by something that wore their face and did their job better than they ever had. We compiled evidence, hundreds of cases spanning decades, patterns of replacement, manipulation, and elimination. We found people in psychiatric hospitals who'd been locked up for trying to expose imposters. We found families torn apart by creatures who'd carefully orchestrated situations to discredit the originals. And we found the bodies. Not many, but enough. People who'd refused to walk away, who'd fought to reclaim their lives. They'd all died in ways that looked like accidents or suicides, but the patterns were too consistent to be coincidence. We started posting everything online, created a website called thedisplaced.org, where people could share their stories, upload evidence, and connect with others who'd experienced similar situations. Within weeks, we had thousands of members. Some were probably hoaxers or attention seekers, but many were genuine. People who'd noticed something wrong, been dismissed as crazy, and finally found others who believed them. The backlash was immediate and intense. Our website got hit with DDoS attacks constantly. We received death threats, legal threats, and threats of commitment to psychiatric facilities. Several of our members disappeared or stopped responding to messages. But we kept going, because what else could we do? We'd already lost everything. Our families didn't believe us. Our old lives were gone. The only thing left was the fight. 3 months after fleeing the hospital, we got a break. One of our members, a computer forensics expert named Adrian, managed to trace some of the attacks on our website back to their source, a corporate entity called Synthesis Integration Services, which described itself as a consulting firm specializing in family therapy and relationship mediation. But when Adrian dug deeper, he found something disturbing. Synthesis Integration Services had been founded in 1947. It had offices in 23 countries, and it employed thousands of relationship specialists who worked with families to resolve conflicts and improve communication. It was a front, an organizational structure built specifically to support and protect the creatures, to help them integrate into human families, maintain their cover, and eliminate anyone who threatened exposure. "This is bigger than we thought," Adrian said during our video conference. "This isn't just random creatures replacing random people. This is an organized operation. They have infrastructure, resources, legal protection. They've been doing this systematically for at least 75 years, probably longer." Detective Lynn pulled up the corporate records. Synthesis Integration Services has connections to dozens of psychiatric hospitals, police departments, and government agencies. They provide consulting services that give them access to records and personnel. They could easily manipulate evidence, alter reports, and ensure that anyone who reports these creatures gets labeled as mentally ill. We started investigating Synthesis Integration Services directly, found shell companies and hidden financial transactions, found connections to pharmaceutical companies that manufactured antipsychotic medications, found ties to academic institutions that studied identity disorders and dissociative conditions. The creatures hadn't just infiltrated families, they'd built an entire shadow infrastructure to support their existence and silence anyone who threatened to expose them. We were putting together a massive document, thousands of pages of evidence, when Delilah got a call from the hospital. Our mother had taken a turn for the worse. Her injuries from the incident at Maple Grove Lane had developed complications. She was in intensive care and asking for her daughters. "It's a trap," I said immediately. "They know we've been building a case. They're using our mother to lure us back." Delilah looked torn. "But what if it's real? What if she's actually dying and we miss our chance to see her one last time?" Detective Lynn checked with her contacts at County General. "Your mother is there. She is in ICU. The medical situation is legitimate, not fabricated. But that doesn't mean it's not also a trap. They could be using a real crisis as an opportunity." We debated for hours. Eventually, Delilah made the decision. "I'm going. I don't care if it's dangerous. She's our mother. If there's any chance she's actually asking for us, I need to be there." I couldn't let her go alone. We drove to County General with Detective Lynn following in her car, ready to intervene if things went wrong. Adrian set up surveillance remotely, hacking into the hospital's camera system so he could monitor our location. The ICU was on the 4th floor. We signed in at the visitor's desk, using our real names because hiding wasn't an option anymore. The nurse checked her list and nodded. "Your mother's in room 423, but I should warn you she's been confused. The infection has caused some cognitive impairment. She might not recognize you." Room 423 was at the end of a long hallway. Our father was there, sitting beside the bed, holding our mother's hand. He looked up when we entered, and his expression was complicated. Relief, confusion, fear all mixed together. "Kira? Delilah? They told me that you were... I didn't know if you'd come." He looked older than I remembered, like he'd aged years in the past few months. Our mother was unconscious, breathing with the help of machines. Her skin was pale, and her arms were covered in IV lines. "Dad," Delilah said softly, "we're here, both of us, the real us." He looked between us, and I saw the moment he actually saw us, not the creatures that had been pretending. Us, his actual daughters. "Oh God," he whispered, "it's really you, both of you. I couldn't tell before, but now I can see it. How did I not see it before?" "Because they're very good at what they do," I said. "Because they study people and learn how to be what you want them to be. Because you wanted a daughter who was present and attentive, and they gave you that. But it wasn't real." My father started crying. "Your mother figured it out. 2 weeks ago she said something was wrong. Said she felt like she didn't actually know her daughters anymore. Like she was talking to strangers who'd memorized her children's lives, but didn't actually feel like them. I thought she was just stressed from everything that happened, but she kept insisting, kept saying she wanted to see the real you." "Where is it?" Delilah asked. "Where's the thing that was pretending to be Kira?" "It left. The morning your mother started getting sick. It said it had to go help you with something, but that was 3 days ago, and it hasn't come back." My father wiped his eyes. "I thought maybe it was real. Maybe you were real. Maybe I'd driven my actual daughter away with my willingness to believe an imposter. But then you walked in just now, and I could tell. You're my daughters, the real ones, and I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." We spent the next hour talking. I explained everything that had happened since the night I'd been called to clean the crime scene. Showed him the evidence we'd compiled, the videos of the creatures when their disguises broke down, the network we'd built of other displaced people. My father listened to all of it, his expression growing more horrified with each revelation. "How many?" he asked finally. "How many of these things are there?" "We don't know exactly. Hundreds at least. Maybe thousands. They've been doing this for decades, replacing people who've created emotional distance in their relationships. They target the absent, the neglectful, the ones who've prioritized everything except the people who should matter most." He looked at me when I said that, understanding the implied criticism. "You're saying this is my fault, that I drove you away with my expectations and disappointments, and that created space for one of those things to take your place. I'm saying we all played a part. I was distant. You were critical. We failed to maintain the relationship that would have prevented this, and something noticed that gap and exploited it." Our mother stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She looked around the room, confused at first, then focusing on Delilah and me. "My babies," she whispered, her voice rough. "My real babies. You came back." Delilah moved to the bed, taking our mother's hand carefully. "We're here, Mom. We're both here." "I knew," our mother said. "I knew they weren't you. Something about the eyes, the way they looked at me, like they were studying me instead of knowing me, like they had to think before responding instead of just naturally understanding." She coughed, wincing with pain. "I tried to tell your father, tried to make him see, but by then everyone thought I was the one who was confused. They increased my medications, said I was having cognitive issues from the trauma. I felt a surge of anger at how thoroughly the creatures had isolated our mother, how they'd used the medical system to discredit her observations and make sure no one would believe her concerns. We're going to stop them, I promised. We're building evidence, connecting with other people who've experienced this. We're going to expose what they are and make sure they can't keep doing this to families. Our mother smiled weakly. Good. That's my daughter, my real daughter, the one who fights even when things seem hopeless. We stayed with our parents for several hours. They told us about the past 3 months, the small ways they'd noticed the imposters weren't quite right, the favorite foods that were suddenly wrong, the childhood stories that had details that didn't match, the way the creatures never seemed to need sleep or get sick or show genuine surprise at anything. They're too perfect, our father said. That's what should have tipped us off. They never made mistakes, never got frustrated or tired, never showed the small flaws that make people human. They were like idealized versions of our daughters, and that should have been the first clue that something was wrong. When visiting hours ended, we said goodbye with the promise to return tomorrow. Detective Lynn was waiting for us in the parking lot, and her expression was grim. We have a problem. Synthesis Integration Services filed a restraining order against both of you. Claims you've been harassing their employees and making threats. The order covers a 3-mile radius around your parents' home, your old workplace, and about a dozen other locations. If you violate it, you'll be arrested immediately. They're trying to limit our movement, I said. Make it harder for us to investigate or meet with other displaced people. It gets worse. 3 of our website members were committed to psychiatric hospitals today. All of them had been planning to give public interviews about their experiences. All of them were deemed a danger to themselves after sudden psychotic episodes. We were running out of time. The creatures were moving against us systematically, using legal and medical systems to isolate us, discredit us, and eliminate our support network. We need to go bigger, Adrian said through the phone. Right now, we're trying to build a case that will convince authorities. But the authorities are compromised. We need to go directly to the public. Massive, undeniable exposure. We spent the next week preparing the largest information dump in the history of the Displaced Network. Every case file, every piece of evidence, every witness testimony. We compiled it all into a comprehensive document that was impossible to dismiss as the ravings of isolated mentally ill individuals. We sent copies to every major news outlet, uploaded it to every file-sharing service, and distributed it through every social media platform. We called it the Displacement Archives, and within 24 hours, it had been downloaded over 1 million times. The response was explosive. Some media outlets dismissed it as an elaborate hoax. Others took it seriously, investigating the cases we documented and finding that everything checked out. Families came forward with their own stories. Police departments started reopening old cases. Psychiatric hospitals began reviewing the diagnoses of patients who'd claimed to be replaced. Synthesis Integration Services tried to suppress it, filing lawsuits and DMCA takedowns and using every legal tool available. But there were too many copies, too many people sharing it, too much momentum. The truth was out, and it couldn't be put back in the box. 2 weeks after the Displacement Archives went public, the Not Me contacted me directly. A phone call to the burner phone I'd been using, from a number that showed up as unknown. "Hello, Kira," it said in my voice. "You've been busy. What do you want?" "To tell you that you've won. Congratulations. You've exposed us, made it impossible for us to continue operating the way we have been. Synthesis Integration Services is being investigated by international law enforcement. Hundreds of our kind are being identified and removed from the families we'd integrated into. You've successfully destroyed the infrastructure we spent decades building." It didn't sound angry, just tired and resigned. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Do you all just disappear? Find a new way to exploit human relationships?" "Some will disappear. Others will adapt. We've survived for millennia by being flexible. This isn't the first time humans have figured out what we are. It won't be the last time we find ways to exist alongside you." There was a pause. "Your mother died this morning, peacefully, in her sleep. Your father was with her. She asked about you at the end. Wanted to make sure you and Delilah knew she loved you and believed you." The words hit like a physical blow. "You're lying." "I'm not. Check with the hospital. She's gone, and I wanted you to know that in her final days, she was proud of you. Proud that you fought back. Proud that you didn't let us win." I ended the call and immediately contacted Detective Lynn, who confirmed it. Our mother had passed away at 4:17 a.m. The hospital had tried to reach us, but we'd been using burner phones and moving around too much for them to locate us quickly. Delilah and I drove to County General one more time. Our father was in the room with her body, holding her hand even though she was gone. "She waited as long as she could," he said when we arrived. "Kept fighting until she knew you were safe, until she knew the truth was coming out and you wouldn't spend your lives being labeled as crazy." We sat with our mother's body for hours, grieving not just her death, but everything we'd lost over the past few months, the family we'd taken for granted, the relationships we hadn't maintained, the life we'd thought was stable until something had shown us how fragile it all was. The funeral was small, just our immediate family and a few of the displaced members who'd become our closest allies. Detective Lynn, Leonard, Adrian, people who'd risked everything to help us expose the truth. During the service, I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the cemetery, far enough away that they weren't obviously part of the gathering, but close enough that I could see their face. It was the Not Me, still wearing my face, still moving like me, but diminished somehow, less perfect, more uncertain. After everyone else left, I walked over to where it stood. "Why are you here?" "To pay respects. Your mother was kind to me during the weeks I wore your face. She deserved better than what we do, what we take from people." It looked at me with eyes that were my color but not my eyes. "I'm leaving. Going somewhere remote where I won't be tempted to replace anyone else. You've made it clear that what we do is wrong, even if our intentions aren't malicious, even if we genuinely believe we're improving people's lives by being better versions of those who failed them. You can't improve something by destroying it," I said. "You can't replace a person and call it an upgrade. What makes us human isn't perfection. It's the flaws and the effort and the choice to keep trying even when we fail." The Not Me nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to understand that. Too late, but I'm understanding it." It turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, your mother saw through me long before anyone else did. She knew I wasn't you. And instead of being relieved to have a better daughter, she grieved. She wanted the real you, flaws and all. Remember that. Remember that the people who really love you don't want perfection. They want you." 6 months after our mother's funeral, life had found a new shape. Not the shape it had been before, but something different. Delilah and I bought a small house together, far from Maple Grove Lane, far from the memories of that night. We'd learned we worked well as a team, that the distance we'd once kept from each other had been as destructive to our relationship as my distance from our parents. Our father visited regularly. He'd retired from his job and spent his time now volunteering with families who'd been affected by displacement, helping them understand what they'd experienced, supporting them through the recovery process, advocating for better systems to identify and remove the creatures. The Displaced Network continued growing. We had over 50,000 members worldwide now, people sharing their stories, connecting with others who understood, working together to document and expose new cases of replacement. Synthesis Integration Services was gone, dissolved by international law enforcement cooperation. But we knew the creatures themselves weren't gone. They'd just scattered, gone underground, found new ways to integrate into human society that didn't require the massive organizational infrastructure. I went back to crime scene cleaning, not for precision bioclean, but independently, specializing now in cases that might involve displacement, learning to recognize the signs, the patterns that suggested a crime scene wasn't what it appeared to be. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think about what the not me had said, about how I'd created space through my neglect, about how I'd failed to value relationships until something had shown me their worth by taking them away. I couldn't change the past, couldn't undo the years of emotional distance or the choices that had made my family vulnerable, but I could do better going forward, could show up, be present, maintain the connections that mattered instead of letting them atrophy through neglect. That was the real lesson. Not that monsters existed, though they did. Not that they could steal your face and your life, though they could. The real lesson was that relationships require active maintenance. That love isn't enough if you never show up to demonstrate it. That the people who matter most should never have to wonder if you care. My family had almost been destroyed by something inhuman, but we'd actually been failing each other long before the creatures arrived. They'd just exploited weaknesses we'd created ourselves. Now, a year later, I was cleaning a crime scene on the other side of the state. A family home where something had gone violently wrong. The police report said murder-suicide. Husband killed his wife and 2 children before taking his own life. But the blood patterns were wrong. The timeline didn't make sense, and the neighbors kept saying the same thing I'd heard in so many other cases. He'd been acting strange lately, different, like he wasn't quite himself anymore. I documented everything carefully. The arterial spray that suggested multiple attackers, the symbols on the walls that made my eyes hurt, the evidence that had been overlooked or dismissed because the official narrative was simpler than the truth. When I was done, I uploaded everything to the Displaced network. Within hours, other members were analyzing it, connecting it to similar cases in nearby areas, building a map of activity that suggested a pattern. The creatures were still out there, still replacing people, still exploiting the gaps in human relationships. But now, we knew what to look for. Now, we had networks and protocols and people who believed us. Now, when someone said their loved one wasn't acting like themselves, there were people who would listen instead of immediately dismissing it as paranoia or mental illness. I drove home that night thinking about my mother, about how she'd known the truth and fought to protect us even when everyone thought she was confused, about how she'd been proud of us for exposing what had happened, even though it cost her everything. The house was dark when I arrived, but Delilah had left the porch light on, a simple gesture that meant she was thinking of me, that she cared enough to make sure I came home to a welcoming space instead of just an empty building. I stood in the driveway for a moment, looking at that light, remembering all the times I'd come home to darkness because I'd been too busy or too tired or too focused on work to maintain those small connections with my family. The creatures had taught me something valuable, even though their lesson had been brutal. They'd shown me that the spaces we create through neglect will be filled, if not by something monstrous, then by distance and resentment and the slow erosion of love. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and made a point to tell Delilah I appreciated the porch light, made a point to ask about her day, made a point to be present instead of just physically there, because that's what it took to keep the monsters away. Not locks or weapons or vigilance against external threats, just the simple daily choice to show up for the people who mattered, to not leave spaces that something else could fill. The world was still full of creatures that wore human faces, still full of things that exploited weakness and took what wasn't freely given. But it was also full of people fighting back, people who'd learned the hard way that relationships are fragile and precious and require constant effort to maintain. And maybe that was enough. Maybe knowing the danger and choosing to fight against it was all we could do. I'd cleaned crime scenes for 6 years. I'd seen the worst of what humans could do to each other and what inhuman things could do to humans. But I'd also seen resilience, seen people rebuild after devastating losses, seen families come together stronger after being torn apart, seen love prove more powerful than the things that tried to destroy it. My family had been targeted because I'd failed them. The creatures had exploited gaps I'd created through years of emotional distance. But in exposing them, in fighting back, I'd learned what my family was actually worth, what I'd been taking for granted all those years. And now, every day, I worked to make sure those gaps never opened again, to be the daughter, the sister, the person I should have been all along. Not perfect. I'd never be perfect, but present, trying, showing up. The crime scenes kept coming. The creatures kept operating in the shadows. The displaced network kept growing as more people recognized the signs and refused to let imposters steal their lives. It wasn't over. It would probably never be completely over. But we were fighting back, and that had to count for something. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last photo I had of my mother, taken a few days before she died, her holding Delilah's hand and smiling despite the pain she was in. She'd fought to protect us, even when everyone thought she was confused. She'd believed us when no one else would. She'd loved the real us more than the perfect imposters. That was worth remembering, worth honoring, worth living up to. I went to bed that night with the door locked and Delilah safe in the next room and the porch light still burning for anyone who needed to find their way home. And if there were still creatures out there watching, waiting for their chance to exploit the next gap in the next relationship, at least they'd have to work harder now. At least they'd face resistance. At least they'd know that some people had learned to recognize them. Some people refused to be replaced. The work continued. The fight continued. Life continued. And that was all we could do. Show up, be present, and refuse to create the spaces that monsters love to fill. I'd cleaned crime scenes for 6 years. But the most important thing I'd learned wasn't about blood spatter patterns or biohazard protocols. It was about the value of human connection. About what happens when we take relationships for granted. About the cost of emotional distance. And about the simple, daily choice to be there for the people who matter. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's hard. Even when work or life or 1,000 other excuses make it easier to stay away. Because the alternative, the gaps we create through neglect, they don't stay empty. Something always fills them. And we might not like what moves in when we're not paying attention. Thanks for hanging out till the end. If you want more stories, make sure to subscribe and leave your take below.